in the whole 6010.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined as always by Field, Yates, and Mike Clay. Guys, we're diving into quarterbacks today. We did running backs on Monday. We did wide receivers yesterday. Go back and check out those shows if you have not listened to it. They were a lot of fun. But we're going to have a big quarterback conversation today. First and foremost, though, guys, I just want to ask you, how you doing? How are things?
I'm doing great. I'm riding high right now. I don't know if you guys heard the news, but ESPN 2 set a ratings record, I should say, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then that record was broken between 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN News as the Fantasy Focus stormed your TVs.
What was on?
Fantasy Focus?
Oh, God, okay.
Wow, Mike, way to be.
Thanks a lot,
Who's
Mike.
on that show?
Thanks
I
for
haven't
tuning
seen
in.
that. I'm not familiar with that.
We had
Is
a
that
couple
about
of
baseball?
cameos.
Fantasy Focus baseball?
Yeah, I mean, it
Eric
was a
and
deadline yesterday. Yes, the trade
Tristan?
deadline.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that checks out. Okay.
Is my mic okay right now? I can't tell.
No, right now it's okay as long as you don't touch it very much during
Wait, so
the-
day one, you broke yours. Day
Yes.
two, you broke yours.
Good luck, Mike.
Hands off.
By the way,
I'm gonna not
ESPN
touch-
officially instituted the if you break it, you pay for it policy this morning.
Yikes.
So
These are
beware.
probably like, what, $5?
Yeah,
would say?
they're
I think I got, I mean, on eBay, you can get them for a little less than that. But
Okay.
$5 at cost.
$5
right around the
million?
same price as the cards that I buy from Field on eBay. Around the same cost.
Field Yates trading cards?
Yeah, the trading
What are they
cards.
worth these
You want one?
days?
I think I bought a 12-pack for 84 cents recently.
80 for that's wow. I mean, that's
I paid way more for the postage than I did the cards themselves.
what's worth more, do you think? The Field Yates trading card or my massive collection of Chad Pennington rookie cards and slash
Not even close.
and Mark Martin. I have a lot of Mark Martin cards as well.
It might be Field Yates, though. It might be.
Oh, no way.
I feel bad.
Hold on, Chad.
All that
Pennington.
time I spent at the auction collecting all these cards.
We talked about this last year, though. And just a reminder, and we'll get into football in 10 seconds. Chad Pennington's son,
Yes.
dog.
See, I know.
Absolute dog.
So I don't know how to pick favorite athletes, but I know how to pick their sons because Andrew Jones was my favorite baseball player growing up, and his son Drew is like like the top prospect coming up through as well. Chad's son. So
It's so good.
Andrew Jones, same birthday as me. We're, I think, a few years apart, though.
Hey, seeing as how we're a football show, though, I do want to mention this. Sign-ups are open. If you have not signed up for an ESPN Fantasy League, go out there and get one opened or reactivate your league. Get things going so that you can be diving in deep on other things, but make sure you go out, sign up for an ESPN Fantasy League right now.
yeah, projections have been in that game for months. I mean, you can look at your week one projections. I update those like every week based on the latest news, so you can already get ahead of the game and start looking at week one.
Every week. Latest news. Hey, speaking of latest news, did DJ Moore move up for you at all with that big extension?
I'll tell you what, I love it. And I mean, they're telling us what the future of that offense is with Moore and Odunze. I mean, that's awesome. I love that 1-2 punch. I worry about Moore's fantasy upside, ceiling a little bit now with Odunze there, because theoretically, Odunze should quickly become the one, if not in year two. So, but that's exciting. And that kind of, the investment in Odunze, now the investment in Moore says, like, maybe they're the 1-2. Maybe Keenan Allen, they kind of just like, is he's in his early 30s, kind of take it a little easier on him. Maybe he's the guy that's off the field in 3 wide sets occasionally, or they're rotating him. So it's going to be, from a Bears perspective and from a watching perspective, it's going to be a lot of fun. Caleb Williams' perspective, and that's all going to be fun. But from a fantasy perspective for the wide receivers, it might be a little inconsistent and tricky.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do to help Caleb Williams, that entire receiving core. And let's just dive into quarterbacks. We'll talk about Caleb Williams and the rookies in a little bit, but right now, Field, diving into Tier 1 quarterbacks. Is there a title for these guys?
Yeah, there is. You know why? Because I'm creative. So the title for Tier 1 is Superstars. How about them apples?
Wow.
Mike? You like it or no?
Wow.
Okay, is that past the Mike Clay Tier 1 naming test?
Single word.
A+, okay.
Very much. There are 5 quarterbacks in Tier 1. We can debate these quarterbacks in just a moment. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson, the reigning defending NFL MVPs, done that twice in his 6 seasons in the league. These 5 players all are going to present a ton of upside every single week.
Every week.
What do you guys want to talk about in this one?
I take umbrage.
Okay.
I take umbrage
You
on
want to do
one of
the
these
Anthony
rankings.
Richardson or the Josh Allen thing first?
I want to do. All right, we're going to start at the top.
Let me do the
I'll
Josh
sit on
Allen
my
thing
umbrage.
first. All right,
Let me
because-
sit on my umbrage, and you talk.
Yeah, let's just. I want to quickly state my case on Josh Allen, and I fear this might be a touch of a straw man argument, But I have received a bit of pushback from people saying, yeah, but Josh Allen lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Does he really deserve to be atop the quarterback rankings?
Great question.
Once again, after scoring the most fantasy points in each of the past 2 seasons, seems pretty good to me. But if you go back and look at the final 8 games of last season, final 8.
That was during Diggs' big struggle, correct?
Yeah, Stephon Diggs finished the season with 10 straight regular season games under 100 receiving yards. In the final 8 specifically, I was just looking at the calendar. I think it was like right after the bye, or maybe it was right after the coordinator change. In any event, Stephon Diggs had no more than 86 receiving yards in any of those games.
Yeah.
He had 1 touchdown in those games. All right, so a bad stretch for Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
Gabe Davis in those 8 games had 5 zero-catch games.
Wow.
So what we are basically saying is that those 2 players were largely non-factors, or they were very replaceable factors in those 8 games. In those 8 games, Josh Allen was a top 6 quarterback 5 times, including a week as quarterback 1. He was a top 9 quarterback 6 times, so 6 out of 8 weeks with his 2 star wide receivers, or I guess 1 star wide receiver and 1 starting receiver, basically doing very little. Was still a top 9 quarterback option in 6 of the 8 games. One of the games in which he had a quote-unquote dud, 16.4 fantasy points, was the game in which they waxed the Cowboys 31-10. Like, Josh Allen is money in the bank. I'm not concerned at all about the fact that he lost those 2 wide receivers. Stephon Diggs is an excellent player. That can be true. So can the fact that Josh Allen is as valuable as any quarterback in fantasy football, regardless of who is around him. That can also be true. I feel very strongly about Josh Allen. He might be my pick for NFL MVP this year.
Yeah, I like it. And, there was a reason why he was still so good. Like, those guys weren't catching touchdowns. There was a reason he was so good in fantasy. And obviously, it's his legs. I think if I told you last year that Jalen Hurts scored 15 rushing touchdowns, you'd say, that makes sense. How many do you think Josh Allen had last season? How many regular season rushing touchdowns did he have last
I'm going to go with 10.
He had 15, Mike.
He had 15.
He had 15 last year? No, he didn't.
Number as Jalen Hurts. That's one where I was like,
Wait, Josh Allen did?
yeah, when I first saw that, too,
Really?
I was like, that's not right. But he scored so many rushing
forget?
touchdowns in the second half of the season. He caught up to Hurts and had 15 rushing touchdowns last season. He's been near the top of the quarterbacks in rushing attempts, yards, and touchdowns. Carries inside the 5, you name it. Every year he's been in the NFL so far. So no doubt about it, his rushing gives him such a high floor. And honestly, like, if Curtis Samuel, we know who he is. He has Kincaid and Knox. He has James Cook out of the backfield. Keon Coleman might be great, and maybe he's just okay. He's young. It might take a while, but he has enough there.
Yeah,
to at least
Shakir
support
coming on this
him being
year,
the QB1. Yeah, Shakir, there it goes.
Oh, it's
There's
getting
step 1.
close, Mike.
Roll the microphone. There's enough there for him to sustain his QB1.
And by the way, we have seen quarterbacks have top-of-the-market seasons with bad or average supporting cast around them, right?
Absolutely.
2 seasons ago, Travis Kelce was the only guy you trust in that Chiefs offense, and Patrick Mahomes led the NFL in passing yards. Lamar Jackson, we talked about this yesterday on the show. Like, how many alpha, true number 1 wide receivers has he played with? And he has been the top scoring quarterback in fantasy football and a 2-time MVP. A quarterback can be QB1 without having elite weapons around him. Josh Allen is that. I just wanted to make that very clear. He's so money in the bank. Let's do the Anthony Richardson thing.
Well, really quick, I just want to add on. Allen has also had seasons, including recently, where his yards per pass attempt was dreadful, and he was still QB1.
Yeah.
So we've already seen him have bad passing efficiency and still be a terrific fantasy option.
I want to ask this question. I'm just curious. Okay. Understanding that both Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen had 15 rushing touchdowns. Mike, you'd never project that. That number is astronomically high for a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
But if you had to say one of these two quarterbacks was going to get back to that mark, do you think it would be Josh Allen?
I'd say Hurts.
Hurts.
I think Hurts is more
even
likely
with Saquon
because
Barkley
of all
coming
the goal line work. Yeah, all that goal line work and the brotherly shove, which Buffalo does not do near as often, right? So I think Hurts is more likely to get there because he's on a historical rushing touchdown pace for quarterbacks. Like, put Vic and Lamar and all these guys aside, like, Hurts is the pace he's on is unbelievable. So I would say he's more likely, but that doesn't mean Allen can't do it.
I wondered that because it felt like they did not want to ever use DeAndre Swift at the goal line. He was super inefficient inside the 5, but that was DeAndre Swift, not a guy named Saquon Barkley, who has really good goal line ability.
Miles Sanders had, the year before he had 8 rushing touchdowns, and Hurts still had, 12.
Yeah,
13,
double
14,
digits.
something like that. So I'm not too worried about that.
All right, what about Anthony Richardson then? This is the only one. I don't want to say I disagree with this,
No.
but when it's titled Superstars,
Do it. Go ahead,
This
both of
is
you.
the one quarterback that I
lay it
don't
on me.
think I
Come
can
on.
say is a superstar yet.
fine.
He's a superstar in waiting.
Yeah.
He's in the on-deck circle
I'm
for the
projecting.
superstars.
Good. Hit me more.
That's where I'm
I
at.
cannot understand taking Richardson over someone like Lamar Jackson. Like, you're hoping that Richardson is Lamar Jackson. If you get a Lamar Jackson season at him, you're like, okay, that's good. Like, that's great. That's what I want. But we don't know for sure if he is that. You're hoping he is that. Lamar Jackson's already done it. He's done it 4 years. I mean, he's finished in points per game the last 5 years. Jackson's been first, ninth, 6th, and last year he was third. He has such a high floor in terms of his rushing production. You know he's going to deliver there, first in rushing yards among quarterbacks last season. We talked about all the touchdowns. Lamar Jackson still first among quarterbacks in rushing yards last season. Also, talk about passing upside. Lamar Jackson had a career-high 8.0 yards per pass attempt last season, 5th best among quarterbacks, 29 total touchdowns. He's never finished lower than 13th in average depth of throw, which means he's still pushing it down the field. He's checking pretty much every box you want. And again, he is what you're hoping Richardson is. So I don't understand taking Richardson over him.
You know, Mike, it's a projection game, right? And we are not evaluating merely past performance. We are using past performance to forecast what we think is going to happen in the future. Lamar's unbelievable. You just laid out all the incredible numbers. Lamar last year for a while was up and down. Like, we saw that. And so what I am expecting is the possibility that Anthony Richardson, with a full offseason and being healthy and hopefully staying healthy, knock on wood, you big dummy. Me being the big dummy in this case.
That's fair. That's very not. Are you calling Anthony Richardson a big dummy?
No. Is that he might present more comparable upside with just maybe even, well, I guess more upside, even a little bit more. I'm planting my flag. Listen, if we all think alike, none of us are thinking, right?
I like it, Field.
I'm in on Anthony Richardson. I think we were talking about the potential next Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. That's what I think we're talking about.
You're just calling it a year early, and this is not a year early even, because we saw part of it last year.
That I think that a year from now, when we're debating the top 3 quarterbacks in fantasy football, I presume that Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts will still be right there, and I think that Anthony Richardson is talented enough to join that mix. This guy is a freak for all the things that Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts do.
Mike?
6'5", 245 pounds, with a 4.45 40-yard dash. I'm not sure we have ever, and he's got to put it together. I get it. He's not a refined passer relative to some of the other guys that we're going to talk about today, is Anthony Richardson. But I'm not sure we have ever seen a player with these kind of physical tools, maybe other than Cam Newton. That to me is the air that I think that Anthony Richardson can breathe as soon as this season. I'm in. If I'm wrong, I'll own it. But I love the player.
I just think it's, and by the way, I have Richardson ranked high, obviously, right? I think you have QB 5, okay? So I agree that there's a lot to love. I just think it's unnecessary risk to take him over someone like Lamar Jackson. Yeah. Guys like this who have an upside but are risky because we haven't seen it over a long stretch. This is not where you want to be spending draft capital on them. They're for later in the draft, and he did it again.
Dang it, Field!
So angry, friends, that he's destroying his microphone.
I'm going LeBron for the rest. You guys know LeBron only holds his mic?
Just attach it.
Just going to hold it.
You know what we should do? We should get like one of them, what are they, like Miami has, like the chains that they put around. Just hang your microphone on a chain around your neck because you can't be trusted.
Let me ask you this.
You guys can't take me anywhere. We have to do a board bet on Josh Allen, by the way.
We might have to do a board bet on you dropping your mic for a third time in 2 days.
That's not even a board. That's just a certainty.
By the way, it pains me because I love Anthony Richardson. And
I know, you're a hater.
Awesome last year. And
he's the quarterback of one of our dynasty
sometimes
teams.
the hype goes too far. That's it. It's
okay,
just
good. Let's board bet this. Can we? Shall we? First board bet?
Yeah, let's do it. First board bet of the season.
I mean, how do you want to configure it? Anthony Richardson straight up against Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So for the 2024 season, you want to do points per game with the minimum number of games played?
Yeah, we could do that. I'm fine with that.
12 games.
12 games played for each.
12 games
Whoever
played.
averages
points
more.
per game.
Great. And are the stakes just a straight board bet, or are we doing sushi lunch or something?
I think it's sloppy steaks.
Sloppy steaks.
What are sloppy steaks? Inform me of this match.
All right, now we've made enough references to I think you should leave that.
Oh yeah.
At this point, you need to be.
I think you should leave if you don't get it. Yeah.
You already broke your mic anyway. Get out of here.
I broke the mic. About to leave the studio.
That's right.
All right, let's do it.
We'll talk about that later.
We should also. I want the fans to get involved. I love our YouTube family. I want them to send over some good suggestions of what Mike and I should wager Anthony Richardson vis-a-vis Lamar Jackson.
Okay, I like that.
And we're going to use
do that for
those.
each board bet.
Yeah, it's a good idea, actually.
Okay, give us
if time permits. Yeah. This is a good idea. So please fire away in the YouTube comments. Send us tweets, whatever, comments on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. We want more ideas of how to actually reward me for winning this board bet. So I say Anthony Richardson will outscore Lamar Jackson on a points-per-game basis in the 2024 season.
I say Lamar Jackson will outscore Anthony Richardson on a points-per-game basis during the 2024 season, minimum 12 games played.
Put it on the board. Congratulations. Put it on the board.
By the way, did you see, I said that with my chest.
You did.
I was in on that.
I
But
felt
Mike
it.
was like,
I
yeah,
wasn't.
and
My
said
brain doesn't
Lamar
process
Jackson.
as quickly as yours, so I'm like, what are all the terms I need to get in there? What
Let
are
me
all
ask
the
you this
disclaimers?
question.
Do you think Lamar is ready to run through a brick wall right now
For you.
No. No, he's ready to run through me. Not a brick wall for me. Anthony Richardson,
that's true.
he's fired up. Anthony and I are about to go have a catch. We're going to go run some routes on air after this show.
And look, they might be watching because we know last year Rashad White came out.
Definitely watch.
This year we heard the comments from Demario Davis, Pop Douglas heard about. I have the Patriots receiver room ranked last.
That's true.
Well, that was actually your ranking?
I assume so. I had him 32nd, in the Munich range.
Wow.
Well, no, this is
I don't know where
great.
else that would have
Wait,
came
do people know this? Okay, this is great.
Maybe someone else does too. It might not
this
be.
is awesome. I didn't realize it was you.
Yeah,
So
the Jags
thought it was
O-line
somebody
last year.
else. Yeah, the Jags O-line. Didn't they have it
They had
number
T-shirts. They
32?
literally had T-shirts.
So good.
The
Yeah,
Jets have hung newspaper clippings in the locker room in years past. So maybe they are watching. Who knows? It's possible.
So do people know
Somebody's
this? So
watching.
recently, Pop Douglas from the Patriots, I guess, was he wearing a shirt or he just said something to the effect of I think I'm going to have 1,000 yards. Someone called us the 32nd ranked wide receiver room.
Yeah, and he was
Not
talking about
referencing
how
who
good
that person was.
Yeah, he was talking about how they have the talent and all that, which they do. They have upside. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We talked about it yesterday, but very unproven room. So who knows? Maybe they're watching. Maybe Lamar is going to go to bat for me.
This is the last thing I want to ask. So go ahead, Field.
The last thing on tier 1 for me is Patrick Mahomes going to bounce back. He's going to be awesome.
I was going to say that I think that he is going to be a much better quarterback this year than he was last year. Field, Mike, I want to ask you this. Understanding I don't want to say trepidation on Anthony Richardson, but some of the pushback that you've had on Field.
Okay.
Would your first tier of quarterbacks be just the top 4 guys, and Richardson would actually be the top of tier 2?
Yeah. So I have them. Your tiers are wider than mine, which is fine. But I just have Allen.
The tiers, Mike. It's not.
I have Allen number 1, and then I have Hurts and Jackson number 2,
As a
and
separate
then it
tier.
goes to Mahomes and Richardson. But I could see you putting those that second tier could be Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes. I don't know if I'd go Richardson there. I think he's closer to Stroud, Burrow, Dak. I could put him totally in that tier. But
All right.
yeah. By the way, I do agree on Mahomes. He has had 300 plus rushing yards in four straight seasons. Last year was the first year he didn't have at least 2 rushing touchdowns at 0. Which was kind of fluky, So he actually left some points on the table there. He's going to be vertical more often this year, so I agree.
Wait.
Those are those early guys. We obviously want to grab someone in tier 1 if you can, although it's going to cost you in the draft because you're going to have to grab one of those guys a little bit earlier. If we were waiting, some of these tier 2 guys, Field, are not a bad option if you wait at the quarterback position.
I got to be honest with you. I just said a lot of stuff with my chest about Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson. But the more and more we got through the mock draft project, I was like, damn, there's so much value in waiting.
a lot of good value.
That's
at
the same
QB.
problem I've had. Especially in 10-teamers, it's easier to be we're in the 4th round now. There's so much talent at all the positions in a 10-teamer where you're like, I can, 4th round, Allen's sitting there, I could take him.
Yeah.
But then it's 4 rounds later and Joe Burrow's still there or something, or Dak's still there, or Kyler's still there. Jordan Love, so I agree with you. It's there's a lot of depth.
So to your point, should we unveil tier 2?
Yeah, what is your tier 2, and do you have a
I
title
just
for it?
listed all of them.
Yeah, you basically did.
Lock them in QB1s. These guys are all quarterback 1. These guys all have a ton of upside and a really high floor, in my opinion. Joe Burrow, C.J. Stroud, Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray. Tell me which one of those guys you don't think is going to be awesome in fantasy football this season.
Brock Purdy
Mike is already
answer.
sitting there who?
outlier to me.
These are
Okay,
great.
tell me why.
I just
That's okay.
utilizing his legs. He feels like he's a very efficient pocket passer. He is. If you put Kirk Cousins on steroids, it feels like that's what he is because he doesn't use his legs as much. But I still think there's going to be a lot of value there.
To be clear, you're not. Are you accusing Kirk?
I'm not
or
accusing
Brock?
Kirk or Brock of steroid usage.
God, just wanted
I'm
to
just
clear
saying
that
if
up.
Kirk Cousins plus is what it feels like Brock Purdy is being prognosticated as here.
I think the offense is just so damn good that it's mitigating factors proof, right? They are just going to find their way to 29 points per game this season, and we can debate whether Brock Purdy's elite or not. I don't really give a crap about that. I do know that the way he performs within this offense is elite, and they're just going to chunk play the crap out of you. That I think Brock's going to have a ton of super efficient weeks.
Yep.
He's going to throw 8 interceptions all season and 25 touchdowns and throw for 3,800 yards, and it's just going to be rock steady every single week.
Yeah, I think good.
I'll tell you the difference for me when I look at Brock Purdy, and obviously there's a reason why these guys are in tier 2, right? But Brock Purdy is not the kind of guy that's going to give you a 35-point week. There are a couple other guys I think potentially in this tier and obviously in tier 1 where it's like if you want those big boom weeks, Purdy's going to be more consistency and have a really, really nice floor for people. And he'll have some nice games, but he doesn't have that same upside that I feel like some of these other guys in this tier has.
Yeah, I think if you put injuries aside and you say who are the guys most likely to fall outside the top 12, probably would be the guys that may not run a lot. And Joe Burrow is one of those guys that's been up and down in that department. He was low last year because of the injury. So if he's healthy, he can run. We saw it a couple of years ago. I think he had 5 rushing touchdowns. And then the other one, Purdy's on that list. C.J. Stroud as well, though. I'll tell you what. I am buying on Stroud because the talent's there and the supporting cast is outstanding. So I think he could run a little more than he did last year, but it was only like $150 on the ground. You'd like to see more because all these guys could be 200, 300, 400 yards. No doubt, but he didn't do that a lot last year. But I think he can put up the huge passing numbers to sustain it. But again, he only had 3 finishes better than 9th last year, even in a season that was really good. So the lack of rushing could hurt him. And of course, Brock Purdy, same kind of thing. He was, this is actually, I think this would surprise both of you. Last year, where is this? Brock Purdy finished 20th in pass attempts. He was.
They had the lowest pass rate in the entire league.
Wow. Yeah, because they were ahead a lot. He's super dependent on elite efficiency, and Kyle Shanahan's there, so he can do that again. He can bring elite efficiency, but that's something that's risky, like betting on touchdowns for pass catchers, like high touchdowns, or betting on elite efficiency is always a risky move. So that gives me some caution about the ceiling for Purdy, and I'm going to talk about that a little more with some other quarterbacks we're about to talk about, whereas some of these other guys, like even Jordan Love could finish QB1 because of what he can do with his legs. I mean, he has that ceiling.
Okay, you can send my thunder because you're really smart and you have a lot of great arguments, but that was where I was about to go.
Jordan Love.
So let me ask you guys a question here. I have heard compelling cases, and I've seen tweets from the great Packers beat writers up there at training camp every single day about pretty much every good Packers receiver. And one day it's like, hey, Jayden Reed just continues to do, he's just a special player, right? And Romeo Doubs has this connection with Jordan Love, and Dontavian Wicks is like this trendy wide receiver sleeper now in fantasy football. And
Christian Watson's getting his hamstring.
You said it, not me. You know, you guys can settle the Christian Watson debate. But the guy had 9 touchdowns as a rookie and missed 5 games that season. He was very, very good.
He was good last year when he was healthy too. I mean,
he's a talented
guy. Just 8th in end zone targets too last year.
In spite of missing all that time. Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here trying to figure out which Packers receiver do I like best? How much more do I like him compared to the rest? And maybe the real takeaway should be, and I'm really sorry to say this in front of you, Daniel, is Jordan Love about to win NFL MVP?
He is a really fun, interesting, realistic sleeper. Yeah, I agree with you. No doubt. I mean, last year he was second in passing touchdowns with 32 and also 247 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns. And again, 7 of his 9 top 12s happened in his last 8 games. I mean, we've only seen he wasn't that good the first half of the season. We were talking about in the pod, is this a problem? Are they going to be in the quarterback market?
Yeah.
And then he figured it out and was
Packers
elite.
fans reminded us about that.
Yes, they did.
Of course.
Listen,
30
freaking years of stability with 15 more coming. Come on.
I called Thirsty Kyle, and I was just like, man.
How do you guys do this?
How nice is it to be a Packers fan to go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to now Jordan Love, who you just locked up to a long
Can I ask a question, though? A little devil's advocate.
Are we sure?
A half a season? Are we
Let me ask you this. I'll tell you, I want to put up a blind resume here. I got a blind resume I want to show you guys while we talk about this. We got 2 quarterbacks that we're looking through. The first one on the left. One of these is a tier 2 quarterback. One of these is a tier 1
that's
quarterback.
Jordan Love on the left. We just spread that whole stat.
That is Jordan Love on the left. Who do you think that is on the right?
Patrick Mahomes.
I think it's Patrick Mahomes because of the no rushing touchdowns. That's what I would guess too.
And the 389 rush.
Look at that! Jordan Love had a better season last year than Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think it's crazy what you guys are talking about. This Packers offense, and don't call me out here, but this Packers offense kind of gives me 49ers vibes, where it's which one of these wide receivers, which one of these pass catchers are you going to have in any given week? There's enough guys there that you can just rotate through, and for someone like Jordan Love, it's fantastic.
I think the problem with the blind resume in this circumstance is that that to me felt like rock bottom for Patrick Mahomes statistically.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
I don't know that was peak for Jordan Love, but I also don't think it was middle pack for him, right? I think that was a really good season for Jordan Love.
Yeah, I don't know. He might not ever throw 32 passing touchdowns again, and that doesn't mean he's going to be bad.
All kinds of
they're 29, 31
right now.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I
Being
just
a realistic guy is just hard.
I have more confidence in Love because the Packers just paid him a lot, and I don't think they do that unless they're sure, like he's the guy. So I feel better about it, but yeah, you don't know. It was a small sample. And by the way, I was discouraged by his appearance in that Niners game. I mean, they should have won that game. They had the beat, and he made some mistakes and they lost. So I don't know. I'm playing a little devil's advocate again. I do like him. I think he's a good target.
Packers didn't have a choice. They had to sign him to a long-term. You can't draft him in the first round and have him sit behind Aaron Rodgers and then have that Hall of Fame quarterback leave town because of what you did.
Yeah, that's fair.
You sort of have to.
So this is not a fantasy stat, but it's a stat that I think reveals just how talented Jordan Love was. Last year, when facing man coverage, 24 touchdowns, 1 interception. A lot of times when you're facing man coverage, you're also facing extra pressure, right? Yep. Teams are saying, we're going to match you, and then we're going to bring the extra rusher and try to make you uncomfortable. Did not seem to bother Jordan Love all that much.
I got one more blind resume to show for you guys on the screen. This one's going to be a little different. We're going to have to guess on this one. Let's see. One of us is an elite bowler. Fan of crappy bands? No.
Both of you are.
Like sloppy steaks, eat veggies. I don't eat veggies.
What?
First,
I was like, I thought maybe it was me and you, but I don't.
I think I'm on the left, and I think you're on the right.
Yeah, I can bench press field.
Look at that!
And we saw that. What was that
working
program you were doing back in the day?
I saw that shirtless photo, Mike.
What was it again?
I don't know. I don't know. I do my own now. Like I came up with my own to save time, so I could do projection updates. But
did you run a projection?
I am slacking a little bit. It's been, as you guys know, it's been a year for me. So
it has been a
lot going on. But yeah, I got to get back to it. I don't know if I could bench field right now, but we'll get back to that.
We'll get there.
I mean, we're talking about this Bahamas trip. We're gonna have to do some push-ups.
Bulk up. You don't eat vegetables?
Only a few.
So Damian Dabrowski, formerly
we're best
famous for that.
We're best
who's
friends.
now works with Matthew, is an incredible resource. He's just an awesome guy too. Legendarily, he's the Al Michaels of fantasy football.
Absolutely, he is.
Hasn't had a vegetable literally ever in his life.
I just saw, I think Matt Collins yesterday. He was like going viral a little bit.
Yeah.
Same thing. He's like anti-vegetables. It's like a thing. I don't get it.
Okay, so you like none.
I eat a few. I eat
What are a
carrots.
few?
I eat some salad.
Those are vegetables.
Spinach is fine. I like bell peppers.
This is a pretty decent list.
Yeah. So
Cucumbers.
So the blind resume was inaccurate.
What I don't like is broccoli, anything green, cauliflower.
Okay, so you don't like some vegetables.
I don't like, the vegetables, I don't like the majority of vegetables.
This is like if someone's like, I don't like toppings on pizza. Only like pepperoni, anchovies, peppers, pineapple. I
eat children's vegetables is what I eat. The vegetables you give to a 6-year-old are the ones that I eat.
Say not 2-year-old vegetables because my kid doesn't really eat any vegetables. One of my kids. The other one will eat everything. All right.
I got a question for you guys. We got a question from the Focus mailbag at KurtZM22 wants to know this. At their current ADP, which quarterback provides better value in a one-team quarterback redraft league? Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, or Jordan Love?
First of all, Dak was on that list there, right? We just did?
He was.
Okay,
yes.
good. I mean, I'll just jump in here since I'm talking right now, but I like all three.
Yep,
I think Burrow and Prescott are my two favorite targets. I think there's just tremendous value there. Burrow, I've talked about him ad nauseum this offseason. QB4 2 years ago. Last year, after that slow start, the first month, he was QB4 and was just lighting it up again before that injury. And obviously Dak was the top 5 quarterback last year, same situation this year. So I like both of those, and we just talked about Love. So I'll say Burrow, but I think that's a heck of a list right there.
I'll go Jordan Love, and I will acknowledge this. ADP data, and thank you, Kurt, for the question, by the way, is like very funky because it changes so much. It's so dynamic, especially this time of the year when people are starting to do a whole lot of drafts.
July ADP is very different than what you see September 3rd.
And so we just did this mock draft project. Go read about it on ESPN.com if you haven't heard us talk about it already. It's pretty cool. We did 35 mock drafts, and Jordan Love was going like a few rounds later than both Dak Prescott and Joe Burrow. So the answer for me would be Jordan Love, leaning on that project. If you can get Love 2.5 rounds later than Joe Burrow or Dak Prescott, to me it's the best value because I view them all in a similar light.
Fields, you've installed a little nervousness in me, though, around the Dak Prescott and just everything happening with the Cowboys organization.
I'm not nervous about it. Dak's going to be there. He's going to ball out this year.
Okay. CeeDee Lamb's going to
I'm
be
a
there.
Dak
And he's
stan.
going to ball out, too?
We're still working on CD. But Dak's going to go nuts. I think the CeeDee Lamb thing gets done. It wouldn't surprise me if this is done sooner than later. He is missing training camp right now, which subjects him to fines. The team can waive those fines because he's still on a rookie contract. But the possibility exists of him missing like $50,000 per day. Like, that's It's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. Who was it? Chris Jones did that last year, right?
He did, yes.
And that didn't really work out. It didn't seem.
It was a curious decision in retrospect, but he ended up getting a long-term deal for a lot of money, so I think he'll be okay.
So he'll be all right. All right, let's move ahead. Talk Tier 3. Tier 3 is a very small tier field. Let's talk about it.
Let's do it. Quarterback 1 potential. That's what these guys are. They have quarterback 1 potential. Their names are Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams, the 2 rookies drafted number 1 and number 2 overall this year. The order for these guys in my rankings is reversed, as Daniels is ahead of Caleb Williams. I'm not going to speak too much on Jayden Daniels right now because we're going to do so in about, 2 minutes from right now. But Caleb Williams is in an awesome spot. I think Caleb Williams is a better passer than Jayden Daniels. I think he's a better overall football player by the smallest of margins than Jayden Daniels. Like, if you had to drop either of them in any of the 32 franchises and ask me who I felt more confident in, it would be Caleb Williams by just a little bit. But it's a great spot for Caleb in Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. He has an amazing wide receiver trio. I think this offense is going to be inclined to throw the football a decent amount. It's a respectable offensive line. Caleb's an absolute surgeon, and he's a good athlete as well. We did not necessarily have to see it all the time at the collegiate level, but he had double-digit rushing touchdowns in each of the past 2 seasons. Very, very capable runner. All these things suggest he has legit top 10 potential as soon as this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, if you look at the success of rookie quarterbacks in fantasy over the last decade or so, a lot of it, all of them, except for, I guess C.J. Stroud's the exception now, but prior to last year, you required rushing production, either a lot of yardage or, 5-6 rushing touchdowns. You needed a lot from that department. You really couldn't do it with your arm. So that's why I'm feeling a little better about Daniels over Caleb Williams, because he has such a high ceiling as a rusher. And Caleb can run. You just saw my projection on the screen, a little over 300 rushing yards projected this year. So that would be fine. But just keep in mind, over the last decade, you look at just first-round quarterbacks. So we're talking about top of the line. 3 got to 4,000 passing yards, 2 25 passing touchdowns. Only 3 were top 12 finishers at quarterback. Kyler Murray, C.J. Stroud last year, and Justin Herbert, who had a lot of rushing production his first year. So I agree. Even though I think Williams may be the better prospect, I agree with that assessment. I think that Jayden Daniels is the better fantasy option. Also, keep in mind, Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona ran the fastest pace offense in the NFL every year he was there. He's now calling plays for Washington.
Wow.
I'm going to say no more about this tier because I know we want to get to a segment here in a moment.
Yeah. We're going to get into, I'll tell you what, I want to look at rookie scoring leaders. I don't know if we have a full screen for this, but this is one of the things that I thought was very interesting. When you look at the last handful, Mike, you already mentioned a couple of them.
Yep.
I think Justin Herbert was the highest out of all of those. Quarterback 8 that season. So when you look at that, okay, so quarterback 8 for Justin Herbert that year in 2020, 332 fantasy points. Kyler Murray, 285 fantasy points in 2019. He was quarterback 11. What's the upside for a rookie quarterback, even if he utilizes his legs, knowing that historically, just recently, we haven't seen any of these guys be able to get above that top 8, and the quarterback position is deeper than it's ever been in fantasy football?
That's a testament to it right there. It's going to take a lot of things going really right for either of these quarterbacks to end up as a top 8 scorer, but there's potential for that. When I'm looking at these last 10 seasons, Daniel, I'm actually looking further beyond that and just reminded, I don't know if he's officially retired. Maybe he'll never announce it. But when he does, I hope the conversation about Cam Newton going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame begins immediately. Mm-hmm. That dude was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Cam as a rookie, 369.3 fantasy points. Are you kidding me? In 16 games? What a special football player that was. What an honor it was to watch Cam and start him for all those years in fantasy football. Special football player.
Yeah, and we've seen guys that can put like top 5 production on right out of the gate. RG3 in Washington. We're talking about Jayden Daniels. RG3 did that. He was QB1. Remember when he got injured that year as a rookie? So we have seen it before. And like those guys, Cam, RG3, Kyler, like tons of rushing production. That's what Jayden Daniels can do. And that's why, this feels like it could be a unique class in year 1 because of Daniels' legs, and with Caleb within the best supporting cast a first overall quarterback has ever had in the history of the NFL. That's going to set him up well as
All right, so let's do this then. Can we? Shall we?
New segment.
We're doing something today. New segment. It's called Change My Mind. I'm going to say something, and I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to change my mind on it, or I can change your mind on it. Jayden Daniels has top 5 upside this year. We just told you about how things can often be difficult for rookie quarterbacks, and yet things also line up pretty well for Jayden Daniels as I sit there.
I love that it's
I'm not looking at you. I'm going to look at the graphic.
That's so good.
Oh, God. Change my mind. Jayden Daniels has top 5 upside this season. So Mike just talked about the rushing. You guys have both talked about the importance of rushing. I believe this, and this is my assessment of the player during the pre-draft process. Jayden Daniels, who, by the way, led all of FBS in rushing yards per attempt last year amongst players with at least 100 rushing attempts, which is important. There are a lot of guys who had at least 100 rushing attempts. He was the best on a per-carry basis, responsible for 50 touchdowns last season.
That's a lot.
I've never seen a quarterback demoralize a team in a stadium, or at least not in a long time. Like I saw Jayden Daniels demoralize the University of Florida last year when he had over 200 rushing yards and over 200 passing yards. He has break-your-will rushing ability. This guy is, no one's Lamar Jackson. You can't crown anybody Lamar Jackson.
Apparently Anthony Richardson's better than Lamar Jackson. But anyway.
As a runner, okay, fine. Look at you little hater over there. Nobody as a runner is quite on the level of Lamar Jackson because he is literally the best that I have ever seen amongst quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels is a special, pure runner that if we're talking about him within the top 5 or 8 running quarterbacks ever, won't surprise me a bit. That's how athletic this player is.
All right, so
he's a great passer, too.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, he was outstanding last year. So there's a graphic on the screen. It was you sitting, for the people just listening, you sitting at a table. It says, Jayden Daniels has top 5 upside, changed my mind. And you were sitting at a chair with a coffee cup, and there was an empty chair next to you. The reason there's an empty chair is because I just went to the bathroom. I was sitting next to you. I was with you. I agree with you. So you don't have to change my mind. Daniel maybe is to change your mind, but I'm on board with this one.
I thought you were saying like you had to go to the bathroom because you were puking over my assessment.
No. It's because I'm on board.
I don't disagree with this. I think that he has top 5 upside, especially on a weekly basis. Jayden Daniels definitely has top 5 upside on any given week, given the things that he can do with his legs. This season, does he have the ability? Yes. Would it shock me if he was top 5? Probably. And that's not, I don't want that to be anything against Jayden Daniels. That's just how good the quarterback position is this year. I think I could make a case for any of the other 8 guys that are in front of him or 10 guys in front of him that could also potentially be top 5 from that standpoint.
I think if you're after you have your starter and you're looking at quarterbacks, and again, we'll get more into this with this next tier, and you're going to understand where I'm going with this. When you are looking at maybe I'll take a QB2, or maybe you waited to get like a borderline QB1 and you want another option, who has more upside than Daniels at that area of your draft? No one does. I don't think anyone does. So I agree with you from that perspective. That's a good spot to throw a dart.
I got a question.
Okay, you go.
I got a mailbag question then. Okay. Tyler, I'm going to throw this up. We were going to do this at the end of the show, but Jimenez, 14-teamer, 1 quarterback league. This is the question.
14-teamer, okay.
I draft 2 quarterbacks within my first 7 picks just to use 1 as trade bait. Do you feel like it's a waste of a pick if you're able to land an established player during the season as opposed to guessing on a player in the draft? That question made me think about this because if you're taking Jayden Daniels at that point as your second quarterback, you have to do so not early, but early enough that you are giving up positional value somewhere else in the draft. So how are you approaching Daniels from that perspective?
I think it's a little audacious. I've seen it work in 16 teams a little more frequently, just the larger the league.
Deeper the league.
Yeah, because for those that are trying to follow the logic there, at some point there is kind of the Mendoza line of startable quarterbacks, and if that number is fewer than 16, then having the 15th best quarterback in a league in which the 11th best quarterback in a 16-team league when you only feel like there are 13 startable quarterbacks week in and week out makes that quarterback, even if he's your backup, very valuable player. I was so confident in Anthony Richardson last year that I drafted him as my backup quarterback in the War Room League, having already drafted Patrick Mahomes. So maybe I was leaning into this take a year ago, just to be ready to take on Mike Clay. I would prefer, though, on average, to just take a wide receiver.
I think part of it is knowing your league, and also let's say you're in the 7th round, like you said, and you're looking at a second quarterback or 6th round. You're going to look at who's available at the other positions and say to yourself, okay, well, if I do trade the second quarterback, am I going to get a player that's currently on the board, or do I think I can get a guy that went off the board in the 3rd round or the 4th round? Yeah. So you kind of have to know what you've done in the past. It could work, but, if you pull that off year after year, what kind of league are you in that they're allowing you to do this every year? Just don't trade with the guy. Don't trade with the guy. Don't keep letting him do it to you. Don't. You should be drafting a quarterback that early if you're going to make a deal like that. It doesn't really make any logical sense for the other people in his league, but, know your league.
Especially in a redraft league, 14 to 16 teams, it makes it easier. But 10 or 12-team leagues, I'm definitely not.
No way.
I'm definitely not. All right, Let's move ahead. Love talking about these rookie quarterbacks, though, because I think there's
too.
always a
Special
lot of
class.
excitement, around these guys.
I want to get this out now because I just don't think there are a ton of great running backs in next year's draft. We do not, I think, have the same wide receiver or tight end or quarterback class forthcoming. Actually, tight end will be better, but quarterback and wide receiver does not seem nearly as savory in 2025 right now, based off what we know on these players. So I know it may sound like you're exaggerating hyperbole with these rookies right now. I think this is a special class that we have specifically at quarterback and wide receiver.
And that's always a good nugget to have, especially in Dynasty when you're thinking about what should I invest in or what rookie pick should I trade for, It's good to know.
All right, so let's get to Tier 4. This is Tier 4 is titled, these guys can be your weekly starter, but you got to be prepared to be flexible. Fairly large tier here: Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. All right, so you may notice some players there that either are coming off of disappointing or injury-shortened seasons, or guys that you're really concerned about the circumstances, like Justin Herbert, because of the fact that they no longer have wide receivers on the roster. That's a joke, but they obviously got rid of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, so it's a much different wide receiver room in L.A., plus this offense that we talked about wants to be more so than most running inclined.
Yep.
I could certainly see any of these guys having 17-week value, maybe with one exception, interestingly, who's actually the second one in this tier, which is Tua. Mm-hmm. The reason why I ended up moving Tua up in this tier compared to where he was initially is because if I am drafting Tua, I am baking in that I need to have a second quarterback in the cradle and be prepared to be a little bit more matchup dependent than I would be with guys that I would have drafted earlier at quarterback. Tua feasts on bad teams. Absolutely feasts.
When it's hot out.
Yes, well, okay, but it seems like because they play in Miami, they're going to have 8.5 good weather games per year, and a lot of stadiums up until about Halloween are going to be it's like 4 or 5 games a year where you're probably worried about weather at maximum for Tua, right?
Well, I mean, when the temp starts to drop, so does his play, which should we get into
That's
that now?
the point, is that my point is this. I'm drafting Tua knowing I have to have a great backup quarterback, but if I get Tua against some garbage team in week 3, I am thinking top 7 upside.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, if I were to rename this tier, it would be no ceiling. The no fantasy ceiling, something like that.
But
or
it would have to be for the full season because Tua definitely has a ceiling in a given week.
Yeah, I mean, you could call them streamers, something along that. These are guys that could, one or two of these guys might finish QB8 and QB9, something like that. Kirk Cousins, we've seen him do that before. These guys have these years where they pop up and they last 17 games and they finish QB8. But usually if you look at points per game, they're all 15th or 14th. And the reason is a lot of these guys do almost nothing with their legs. And I have a little perspective. I'm just going to be a nugget on a few of these guys. Just
Go for it.
Because I think this is important. Some of these guys are really talented, high pedigree, good players, but don't have a good fantasy ceiling. Aaron Rodgers, 2022, 10th in pass attempts, 11th in passing yards, 7th in passing touchdowns, finished 25th in fantasy points per game because he had 94 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. He could put up huge passing numbers this season and finish QB8. He's not going to do more than that because he's not going to run the ball. So, that's Rodgers. Justin Herbert, we've seen his rushing numbers come down. He's been super reliant on massive pass volume throughout his career, which has sustained him. He still has one season finish better than QB9. Can you believe that? Justin Herbert, think about his reputation. He's finished better than QB9 one time so far in his career. Kirk Cousins.
I love that one.
Kirk Cousins, he's finished exactly 12th in fantasy points per game in 3 straight seasons prior to last year. In 8 full seasons as a starter, his average finish in fantasy points per game, 12.1. That's who he is. He's QB12. He's a fringe starter. He doesn't.
Phillip Rivers.
Yes, exactly. And Phillip Rivers infamously never ran the football. Same thing with Trevor Lawrence. He's been finished top 10 in all the categories for quarterbacks the last 2 years. In terms of points per game, 11th and 16th. Wow. These guys just don't have the ceiling that these other guys we've talked about have, and that's why you rank Jayden Daniels ahead of them. That's why I have Jayden Daniels ranked ahead of them.
Yeah.
They might be safe to be right in that 10 to 15 range, but they aren't going to win you your league. They're streamer guys. They're guys in deeper leagues you can rely on as a backing QB1. They're just not league winners.
If you go back and look at the mock draft project, and then I want Daniel to do something that I really believe is tempting fate here. If you go back and look at the mock draft project, a lot of us totally bypass the second quarterback in every single draft. It's a 10-team league. But there was a reason why, like, the threshold to draft your quarterback was frequently Jayden Daniels. Like, that was kind of like the lowest quarterback that was being drafted with relative frequency in that mock draft project.
Yeah, I took him a few times.
This makes me feel like the tier should be called, these guys can be your weekly starter if your name is Eric Karabell. Because Eric Karabell, like, always
Famously
waits. He famously waits at the quarterback position to be able to get good value. And I think that's my problem with tier 4, is that there was such good value in tier 2 and tier 3 that you don't need to wait this late.
I agree. In 10 or 12 team leagues, you don't need to start these guys.
Okay.
I want to say this, though.
But hold on, I want you to tempt fate. No, you go. What were you going to say? Is it about Tua?
About Tua.
Okay, good. Yeah,
You know
this is okay. We were going to the same thing. I want you, like, you have Twitter, right?
I do have Twitter.
At Daniel Dopp.
At Daniel.
You got to be careful about everything you say about every player.
Yep.
But Tua, it doesn't matter what you say. It's going to elicit. He's the Dak Prescott of Miami Dolphins quarterbacks or whatever. He and Dak are the same way in this regard. Like, you say something nice and you get a hive of people that are like, trash, bum. You say something mean, you get people that are like, no, he's actually elite, led the NFL in passing yards. You say something in between, and then you just get 37 replies that say link in bio, and it's usually an adult website.
Yes, correct.
So you got to kind of only
My favorite
say
reply right there. Those are the good replies these days.
That's so much better than all the hate that you get.
I
from
know,
everything.
I know. Anyway, so you have something you want to say. You got to get something off your chest about Tua.
Yeah, I need you guys to change my mind about Tua because I don't have the same love that it feels like you do, Field. Tua is, to me, let me make sure I get this right.
God.
Tua is just a shorter, just as slow, left-handed version of Jared Goff. Okay?
You know what? I want to be one of these guys because they both got 4-year, $212
They got
million
huge deals.
extensions this
Huge
season.
deals. The only difference is one of them has been to a Super Bowl and 2 conference championships. The other one's Tua.
Wow.
So,
That's up for social.
They are similar in this regard. And I probably could have had Jared Goff in this tier for that reason. Is Jared Goff, I believe, has upside in certain situations. He also feasts on inferior defenses. And, of course, playing in Detroit and playing in a division that has the Vikings, he's guaranteed 9 games a year indoors. 9. So,
you know what he has this year?
isn't it like 15?
14 of his 17 games are indoors. One of those 3 being Arizona. The other 2,
Goff.
obviously, Green Bay.
Goff, yeah. So, weather just a little bit less of a concern for Jared Goff, even though he plays in a cold weather city, and he typically feasts on that. But you have to be prepared. Again, you have to be prepared to have a second quarterback if you have Jared Goff.
Yes. I would have.
Because
this is less of a I love Jared Goff in fantasy football and more of I think I would move Tua down to the tier where I think Goff should be at.
Fair enough. I just think Tua's weekly upside, like he absolutely just mashes people early in the season when the weather's good. He's playing bad teams.
I looked at the consistency between the two, and that's the thing that I think bothers me the most. And they're very similar.
Okay.
Tua had 5 games with 18 or more fantasy points. When I look at a starting quarterback, 18 is kind of like the line.
Yeah.
If I don't get 18 points, I'm kind of disappointed with my QB.
Okay, 18,
So that's kind of where I want to be. I'd love to get 20 plus, but 18 is the line. Jared Goff did that 7 times rather than 5 times. So he did it a little bit more. I think he has a little bit more consistency, a slightly higher floor. But neither one of them run the football.
They do not.
At all. Not even close to it. So Jared Goff got bailed out by 2 rushing touchdowns that slightly elevated what it looks like are his rushing stats, so it looked like he had more fantasy points via the run. Neither one of these guys know how to run the football. And I think that because of the, not advent, but the way that we have got to these mobile quarterbacks, I would much rather have a rookie in Jayden Daniels, who I've never even seen play football on an NFL field, but I know what he can do with his legs, rather than either one of these 2 guys.
Okay, so I think I want to say one quick thing, and I think we just ripped through tier 5 because I think we all kind of have reached sort of this lull in quarterback talk, right? It's like you don't really want to settle for these guys. You should be aiming higher. There are a couple players further down the board that are lower, but I just want people to know when your retort to a player being ranked a certain level as a rookie is he's ever played before, I don't care.
Oh, 100%.
I don't care.
100%.
Saquon Barkley absolutely crushed as a rookie running back. We have seen it happen all the time. So, like, you can certainly make credible arguments against players that I'm willing to hear, but because he hasn't played in the NFL before,
That's not one of them.
does not really mean much to me. So, congratulations to those that continue to try that. Tier 5, this is I really could have changed the name a couple of different times on this one, but it's a fringe starter with some legitimate question marks and lower weekly upside. It's 3 players. I don't want to belabor this one too much unless you guys want to talk about some of these guys specifically. It's Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, we just talked about him, and Geno Smith. Any major qualms there?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I agree with you, Daniel, on the Goff-Tua comparisons. The only reason I didn't include Tua in my rant I just went on was because I knew you were going to talk about it, but it's the same thing.
I appreciate that.
And Goff is very similar in that regard. Geno Smith probably played a lot better than people realize last season. His numbers weren't terribly different than the year before when he was a top 10 scorer.
Better football player
at the position.
Could see an uptick this year. I'm excited to see what he could potentially do with Ryan Grubb as an OC and how that could change that offense.
Should we go to tier 6, though? I think tier 6 is kind of interesting, right? Because, well, these guys, I mean, there are a couple of them that have, we're talking about, basement levels floors.
Yep.
Ceiling's kind of interesting.
Yep.
So tier 6 is some dart throws and some familiar faces. Billy Jeans, Will Levis, 22, my quarterback rankings. Danny Dimes is 23, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield. So the dart throws were the first two. The familiar faces were the last two, Matthew Stafford and former Rams quarterback Baker Mayfield. Remember that for 4 games?
For 4 games.
I think so. I'll just say it before you puke when you hear the name Daniel Jones. I get it. Can be a very perplexing quarterback. Giants fans right now are probably saying that's a kind way of putting it. The dude's a fantasy stud when he's healthy and plays.
We talk about guys that use their legs.
Yeah, I mean, it was. He hasn't had a good passing season since his first year in the league, but he had 700 rushing yards 2 years ago. So
I was trying to be nice, and Mike just was like,
no,
easy.
I think they're going to be drafting a quarterback first overall next year. That's my assessment. So
wow.
I agree. I mean, he could be sneaky in fantasy because of his rushing, no doubt about it.
Can the social team get that one on a big?
I have not been that's not been a secret. I've been open on that one. So.
Big yeah. I want multiple Instagram posts.
Wow.
I might get I'll tweet it and then I'll beg Schefter for a retweet. Maybe Woj. Maybe I'll have Woj cross over to the NFL for a minute.
So Patriots have the worst wide receiver room in the league. Giants have the worst quarterback room.
I wouldn't say they have I would say the least inspiring quarterback situation is probably the Raiders, but it could be the Giants if they don't. I mean, look, I'm rooting for Jones. I hope that with a better supporting cast, he's better this year, but I'm just not confident in that team around him.
You're not buying into the idea, and Field mentioned it. When you have a quarterback that can gain 700 yards in a season on the ground, that's not a fluke, it doesn't seem like. That's not something that just happens by accident. Do you just think the rest of the talent isn't there along with the guys that are around him?
Yeah, I mean, the roster as a whole is a problem. I think that's going to limit him as well. And he was running last year, too, before he got hurt. The problem was they scored more touchdowns per game without him than they did with him last year. I can't express how bad they were. They scored, 5 touchdowns in his 4 full games. 4 of those touchdowns came against Arizona. Oof. They scored 1 touchdown their other game. I mean, it was so long ago because it was their first month of the season. They were elite terrible. I don't know how else to
what?
Elite level of terrible.
What is the word for that? Yeah, what's the word for?
I don't know.
Elite,
atrocious, terrible. I mean, they were really bad. I mean, they had Malik Neighbors then, but they had Darren Waller. So I don't know. I have big concerns.
They didn't.
About that
I mean, Darren Waller last year was not Darren Waller. I mean, this is the thing. They paid him $40 million, and other than Saquon Barkley, they've not surrounded him with people that have been able to contribute.
Yeah. I just kind of got lost in all of Mike's numbers there for a second. I couldn't my brain was unable to process.
Most people say that to me. Yeah.
That's okay. Should we talk Will Levis then?
Yeah, we can. First of all, I do take more umbrage that no Bryce Young on there. Year 2 leap. Okay. I can't believe Bryce Young missed the cut. Should get at least some attention there, I think.
I can believe it, Field.
We'll talk about that more another day. But
let's
I'll
talk
make
about
the
Will
case
Levis
for Bryce Young another day. But
really?
Yeah, so my change my mind is that Will Levis has top 10 upside, which feels like it might have those Blake Bortles vibes to it.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Where he just sneaks in his QB 4 or 8 or something. Maybe not 4, but maybe QB 8. But I think he has it in the tank for a lot of reasons. First of all, we've seen he came out firing last year. His first start, he had that 4 touchdown game. He led the NFL in average depth of throw last year. He's very aggressive. He'll push it downfield.
Yes.
Only 4 interceptions, too, by the way. So he protected the ball pretty well. I expect with Brian Callahan there, called one of the pass-heaviest offenses in the NFL in Cincinnati, the same thing. They built this team to throw the football. Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard in the backfield. They saying give Calvin Ridley all that money to go with DeAndre Hopkins. He signed Tyler Boyd. You don't do that unless you're going 11 personnel. You have Chigo Okonkwo. I mean, they're set up. And also, I like what they did with the offensive line. I had them ranked 32nd at O-line going into last year, and it showed up that way. That was a big problem for them, but they have invested in that position, including, of course, first overall pick J.C. Latham, which should be the left tackle. So I feel better about the O-line there. And finally, the key, of course, as we've talked about throughout this show, how do you get to that ceiling? Adding value with your legs. Yep. Now, he did not do that last year, okay? 57 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. It was a small sample. He only played about half the season. The year before, he was really injured he wasn't fully healthy. He didn't run a lot.
Toe injury.
2021, 85 carries, 514 yards and 9 touchdowns at the college level. So he has it in there. It's in the back pocket. And if he runs more this year, perhaps he gets to that ceiling. So I think it could be like just a YOLO sort of Gardner Minshew or Blake Bortles type of season. But I could see it happening.
The reality about fantasy points, it does not matter how they look. It's a matter of how many you get, right? Yep. And he has enough of the traits that might like simultaneously be like hard to actually watch when you're seeing them accumulate, but they also might accumulate. Mike mentioned it. He's fearless, like maybe reckless at times as well, but he was able to mitigate the interceptions last season. He is not going to be afraid to take shots down the field, and they are going to find ways to get him opportunities to rush the football near the goal line. Out goes Derrick Henry, maybe the best power back in the past 25 years. In comes Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, who combined
one of these things
weigh
like
Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
You know, like they do, like, was it like, you know, you have like
you put the trench coat on, they stand on each other's shoulders.
Yes, exactly. They have a trench coat on. That's Tony Pollard on top of Tajay Spears, and it looks like Derrick Henry.
That's
so
funny.
I'm with you. I was intentional with having him 22nd, which I think, I mean, it's not like so far above consensus, but I think his consensus record is like 25.5. So at this point in a one starting player position, that's 3.5 spots is fairly notable.
So let me ask you this question, because I don't disagree with this at all. I'm 100% on board with both of you guys on this. I love Will Levis when I'm drafting best ball teams because I don't have to worry about picking the weeks. And if this does happen, right, then you just get the weeks that it works out. Yeah. What kind of a league would you be drafting Will Levis in? And is he somebody that you are like is definitely your QB2, or could he be your QB1 if it was a 16-team league?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a waiver ad if he starts out well. But I think where you're targeting him now, aside of dynasty, would be 16-teamers, your second quarterback. That's where you're drafting guys like that. So yeah, normal 10, 12-team leagues where
he's on the waiver wire.
20 quarterbacks are being drafted. Maybe not. Maybe like the last pick. But don't be surprised again if he's like, like Sam Howell was last year.
Sure.
That guy, Howell did a lot of that with his legs, but the guy that kind of comes out of nowhere, the guy you're not thinking about that somehow ends up in the weekly Fringe quarterback one conversation, I think he's on that short list of guys who can be that guy.
Wow.
Those Titan uniforms need to come back.
I like those ones.
Oilers, they're awesome.
The old ones, I like those.
All right, so in a 16-team league, let me ask you this then. If you're drafting a second quarterback, you're taking Will Levis over a Tua, over a Jared Goff, over a Stafford, or do you feel like in a 16-team league where if you don't have a decent second quarterback, you could be in trouble if your starter gets hurt? You're saying, let me take the solid, safer play?
I'm fine with those other guys. I have those other guys ahead of him. I mean, this is just like super deep sleeper shopping sort of right now. Like, who can surprise? That's what I'm looking for. Like, who's the guy?
Got it.
It happens every year. There's guys we're not even going to mention who are going to be on the fantasy radar this year.
Of course, yeah.
Who went undrafted. There's always guys like that. Yep. And sometimes I just look at that list and say, who is the guy? Do you ever just look at the bottom of your rankings and say, there's going to be guys here I'm going to pick up on waivers. Like, who are those guys? Yeah. And sometimes you think about it, you know what? This guy really jumps out. And Levis is a guy that kind of popped into my head.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't think about it until I looked at this list, but that is some Bryce Young slander, not even making the list when you've got the other rookie quarterbacks.
What do you think?
I think the Panthers are going to be tough.
You want me to make my case? Do we have time here for this?
3 minutes, yeah.
I'll make another case.
Sounds like that's plenty of time.
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, we've talked about this before. Year 2 is a leap year, and then Will Levis applies there. And, I won't get too into the stats right now because I've beat this one to death. But, again, year 2 is when you see these guys make a leap. But last year, let's talk about Bryce Young. Took the second most sacks in the NFL last season, poor yards per attempt and completion percentage, but he had low expected rates in both of those categories, which means he wasn't really set up for success where he was throwing the football, where they were asking him to throw it. The scheme should be better with Dave Canales there. Of course, he was the guy that led Baker Mayfield to his best year last year. He's going to run that offense this year. Much better supporting cast, and that's important because check this out. Last year, when throwing to Adam Thielen, Bryce Young had a 75% completion percentage and averaged 7.1 yards per attempt. That is good. He had a 55% completion percentage and 5 yards per attempt to everyone else. 55. Nice. There you go.
There we
There's
go.
A reference. Deontay Johnson, Xavier Legette, Jonathan Brooks, Thielen's back. I mean, the supporting cast is much better. Also, do you know let me ask you this. Where did he finish in rushing yards and scrambles? Finished the same spot among quarterbacks in rushing yards and scrambles
and rushing yards?
Same spot.
12th.
10th.
So do you think that number will go down because the offensive line is not a sieve this year?
Maybe, but I think he has it in his arsenal a little bit. He was also second in yards per carry, so he was effective when he did it. So I think that when you run for 253 yards, that's a pretty decent number. It shows that maybe if he gets that up to 300 and scores 2-3 rushing touchdowns and makes a leap as a passer. Again, he was the first overall pick last year. Like, this is a guy that has the pedigree. They drafted him to be an elite player, so there's at least a chance. Like, I think he should at least be in that top 25 conversation, and certainly can.
Over who?
Yeah, I was going to say who you
In the top 25? Okay,
Who you taking out? Well, board bet this one.
Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Will Levis. I actually have him ahead of Levis as well.
You want board bet Billy Jeans versus Bryce Young?
Yeah.
Is 2 board bets too much?
I love this.
I don't want to do this one. You know why? Because then I'm going to have to root against Will Levis, and I absolutely do not want to do that. So
out of Middletown, Connecticut. I mean, born in Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's right.
Duh.
That's right.
But went to high school in Middletown, Connecticut.
So I will not board bet it for that reason because I want to root for him. But I would take Young.
We got to end in a second here. I wonder if fans prefer like a high volume board bet or if like there's a certain like sanctity of only doing a handful of them throughout the year.
I like more.
I think when they just come up naturally, like the one earlier today.
If we get 2 in a show, that's fine. Because we
guys,
every show.
okay. Do you guys want to see my Anthony Richardson back tattoo yet, or would you like to wait until the end of the year?
Is that did you and Tyler Fulgham get matching ones, or is
He has a back tattoo now? Oh no, because he loves Anthony Richardson as well.
I don't know. He's still probably recovering from his. Was he on vacation for like 3 weeks or something?
Actually on
It's nice
vacation.
of him to be
I'm
back.
pretty
Mike went on vacation for like a Sunday this summer, so he can't relate.
He's. To be
Yeah,
fair,
I went on vacation and it was an adventure. It's been a year, folks. All right, I'm glad to be back with my 2 best friends.
I'm back player of the year,
that's
Mike
right.
Clay.
Pumped to be here. We love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will be back tomorrow. Same 3 guys, me, Mike, and Field. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourselves. We'll see you on Thursday.
You're in the 06